Hi, I'm John Mayfield, the real estate tech guy with another Global Real Estate School podcast. Hey, welcome to the podcast. My name is John Mayfield, the real estate tech guy, and this is episode 260. Hey, I get it, not every time do I give the number for our episode because sometimes I'm doing YouTube and interviews and so forth, but I looked on my podcast dashboard and it says there are 259 episodes. So this is number 260. I hope that's what I said at the beginning. Now I'm second guessing myself, but welcome to the podcast, episode 260. And I'm going to get back into some of the topics we've been discussing from the PSI Candidate Handbook. And we're going to talk about valuation and market analysis. I believe that's where we're picking up on. You're going to see several questions from the valuation section, appraisals, as we might want to refer to valuation. But keep in mind, market analysis is part of that as well, and they have some questions over that. But the first bullet point in the candidate handbook is the purpose and use of appraisals for valuation. Well, in the course, we understand that appraisals can be used for a multitude of items. I mean, we can have a value for our taxes. Your insurance company has a value for your insurance. The bank has a value. Real estate brokers come up with a value. And you know what? Buyers also put a value on your home. But for the real estate exam, one of the items I want you to remember under this purpose and use of appraisals for valuation is really with the lending process. The bank will only normally loan a certain amount of money based on the value of your home. In other words, it's kind of challenging to get a 100% loan on a home. Now, why is that? It's a little bit harder to foreclose on a real estate home versus repossessing an automobile, if that makes sense. So with a home, the bank really wants you to have some equity into the property. In other words, they really would like for you to have an investment so that you don't walk away from that property. I want you to keep in mind that foreclosing on a piece of property is a little bit more challenging than repossessing an automobile. They want to repossess your automobile, they can come and take your property or your automobile while you are sleeping, right? They hook it up to a wrecker or a flatbed wrecker and off they go. With a home, you have to go through court, and it's a little bit more challenging, and there's a lot of legal, and it takes time. Therefore, the bank wants you to have some equity in the property. So I want you to understand that appraisals for valuation can sometimes be what we call this loan to value, an 80% loan to value or a 95% loan to value. But each and every type of loan is going to require some type of down payment. Now, a question you could have on the real estate examination, and this could fall under financing or valuation, is that when you have less than 20% as a down payment, the lender is normally required to charge you what is called private mortgage insurance, PMI, private mortgage insurance. This is an insurance that will help the lender recover any losses they may incur if they have to foreclose on the property and the property is not worth what it maybe was worth when you purchased the home, if that makes sense. So keep in mind, valuation can be used for a number of different purposes. We have our assessed valuation. We have a loan valuation. And the purpose of the appraisal is to help determine what the property is actually worth. Now, we will get into this a little bit more on future podcasts, but for now, I want you to remember a couple of things from today's podcast. The appraisal for valuation and home loans normally will be referred to as a loan-to-value ratio. In other words, if the bank's willing to provide you an 80% LTV, loan to value, and you are purchasing a home for $100,000, then the bank is only going to provide you $80,000 for a loan, and you will need to come up with $20,000 as your down payment. One of the questions they love to ask on the real estate exam, and just went over this the other day with a student we were kind of going through, and I was tutoring and helping them, which, by the way, at Global Real Estate School, I'm always here to help you pass the test, okay? And so we were on a Zoom call. We were going over some questions, and he said, I saw that question, and the question was this. Buyer puts $1,000 earnest money to go towards the purchase price. They get an 80% loan to value from the bank, or the bank's willing to loan them an 80% LTV, loan to value. How much cash will the buyer need to bring to closing if the purchase price is $100,000? Now, keep in mind, we've got lots of information in this problem, but the bank's only giving an 80% LTV. The sales price is $100,000, so the buyer's going to need to come up with $20,000, correct? Well, that's not correct. That's probably answer A, but remember the buyer gave $1,000 earnest money, and so how much will the buyer need to bring to closing? In this simple scenario, they will need to bring $19,000. That $1,000 is a credit they will receive on the day of closing. So they've given $1,000. They're paying $100,000 for a home. The bank's giving an 80% LTV, loan to value. How much cash will the buyer need to bring to closing? $19,000. So the purpose and use of appraisals is for valuation. Remember, LTV, loan to value ratio. Remember, if it's less than 20%, you're probably going to have to pay what? PMI, private mortgage insurance, and that will insure the lender in case you default, because we need a valuation on real estate because it's much more challenging to foreclose on a piece of property. Well, hey, I want to say thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Be sure and check us out at globalrealestateschool.com. We have some great resources. We are kicking off our Global Real Estate School Academy to help students with really being able to grow their real estate careers after they get their license. That means so much to me, and we would love to have you as a student. But remember, the appraisal and use of appraisals for valuation helps the lender determine what kind of loan they can provide you. And we actually covered a lot of cool things in this podcast. Listen to it again and tell others about it. But as always, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening to the podcast for Global Real Estate School. I'm John Mayfield, the Real Estate Tech Guy. Go out and make it a great day.